Just taking a look at the comments that we heard from Jay Powell, we really haven't heard too much from him recently, but he mentioned about the economy, close to full employment, close to a full recovery. Did it make it seem like he was much the same to Janet Yellen? Is that he really is that Janet 2.0?
So I think, at least at the beginning, he's going to be very close to where Janet Yellen was, because he's supported all of the monetary policy actions that Janet has undertaken. And so I think the gradualist approach is one that is sort of very natural to him and one that Janet had led. So I think at least for, let's say, the next 6 to 9 months, we're going to see that. Now, of course, if the economy changes, we get a spike in inflation or some sort of shock, then we'll really see the potential difference between Jay and Janet. But right now, it's probably going to be continuity.
Well, you mentioned about continuity, but the long term, it seems to be a lot of questions, because what happens when there is a downturn? I mean, some say it's almost likely that we could be seeing some type of end of the cycle. We could be seeing a recession in the U.S. And you, of course, you were in the chair of the Fed's Committee on Supervisory and Regulatory Affairs during the financial crisis. What do you think Powell can bring to the table here based on his experience? Not a trained economist, so to speak, but when it comes to dealing with a potential crisis of some sort, there's not a whole lot of room to cut rates from now, and Republicans haven't been too keen when it comes to QE.
Sure. So this is something, whether Jay has a PhD or not, it's the position the Fed's in. So it's more the circumstance rather than the particulars for Jay. So I think the Fed will, one of the reasons that it's raising rates is because you don't want to let a good boom go to waste. People talked about not letting a good recession crisis go to waste.
Sure.
But here, this is the time where rates should be moving up, where the balance sheet should be coming down, and Jay has been supportive of that. My guess is he will have a lower endpoint than Janet Yellen would for where you would bring the balance sheet down to. So far, the Fed has said they're going to unwind, but they haven't said how far down they're going to go. My guess is Jay would probably have a 2 handle on that, so in the $2 trillion area, whereas Janet probably would have been in the $3 trillion area. In terms of crisis responses, it's really the same playbook, whether it's Jay or Janet there. Try to reduce rates, try to provide support potentially through quantitative easing, and then also hopefully what we'll do is get a good robust financial system so it can withstand shocks better.
Randy, it's Betty. Just hang on 1 second. We've got some breaking news on the earnings front out of Singapore. UOB, United Overseas Bank, coming in with their third quarter net income at 883 million Singapore dollars. The estimate was for 842 million. Also noting their net interest margin coming in at 1.79%, but very important here, their non-performing loan ratio at 1.6%. So again, the net income coming in at 883 million. The estimate was for 842 million. And of course, we'll watch how that stock behaves when the Singapore exchange opens. But Randy, getting back, of course, to the, and hi from Hong Kong there, getting back to the Powell as the appointment, you know, with Powell now being appointed to the chair, we've got one more vacancy here on the Board of Governors. And, you know, and I wonder how problematic is that going to be going forward, since we now have several more vacancies there?
Well, obviously, the president has a lot of opportunity to shape the board. So he has the chair, he has the vice chair for regulation, and then there'll be the traditional vice chair that probably will focus more on monetary policy. And so Jay is obviously, you know, a crucial person. The chair is the most important and first among equals of all the governors. But how the president chooses these others could also have an influence on monetary policy.
Randy, I just want to ask you, as you know, putting yourself in Jay Powell's shoes. Here, he's been at the board for 5 years. He's certainly established himself. He's well respected and well liked. That's pretty clear. Now he steps up to this seat. You've been there, done that. You've watched the dynamics at the Board of Governors, at the FOMC meetings with the bank presidents. What do you think is his biggest challenge? What would you advise him after having been there if he called you up and said, hey, Randy, you know, what do you think?
Well, I think the key thing is being willing to listen and to learn. I think that was one of the things that we saw from Ben Bernanke during the crisis, at least in the way that he operated within the Federal Open Market Committee. We did a lot of very new things, a lot of controversial things, and things that not everyone agreed with. But he was very open to listen to the issues and concerns they had. He would then give pushback and say, but I think we need to do X, Y, or Z, and this is why we need to do it. but people felt that they had gotten a hearing, a fair hearing. I think that's very valuable for Jay to be able to do that. Janet Yellen was very much a consensus builder. She even had fewer dissents than Ben Bernanke had. And it'll be particularly important for Jay to be willing to listen and learn about the economic analysis. I think he's been someone who's been a very avid consumer and excellent consumer of the analysis that the board staff and economists have put out, and he needs to continue to do that. So I think it's really just an acceleration of the activities that he's already been doing, but now there's a bigger burden where a lot more people are focused on him specifically.